Thank you, Sue. Thank you. Thank you. I'll have many thank yous as we go, but thank you to this City of Austin Cultural Arts Division. Thank you to Art in Public Places. Thank you to Sue. Thank you for Anna Bradley. Thank you for Christian Brunsack. You get here for a talk and you have this moment of absolute panic. I don't know if any of you give talks. It's like, oh my God, the thing's not in the front. I couldn't see, So 10 minutes ago I was in full panic mode, but I'm good now. Here we go. Have you ever thought about what's known about you? Every click, every swipe, every photo, everything. It's 2019, and this was the decade where we went as humans from being mostly mysterious 10 years ago to almost completely tracked, completely known. And what that means is starting to seep in. I'm a data artist, and I make work about the future of data, about you, about us. And most people, as soon as I say that, they have this moment where they kind of cringe. And it's like, oh God, Laurie, I just want to hide. But I'm going to tell you that I think this whole conversation about data is going to turn upside down. I think we're going to get to the point where data is going to turn out to be absolutely irresistible. And, I'll tell you, I've chunked up this talk into the explanation of why I think it will be irresistible, and see if I can convince you. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of data and art, a couple of examples, because usually people say, well, how do you turn it into, what do you start with and what do you end up with? And it's some insider stuff that I normally don't show. And then a few projects that and kind of the experience that I have. I'm going to finish with the project that we've done on the Lamar Underpass here. So, when I asked that question, have you ever thought what's known about you, I, a few years ago, made a list. And if a few people that know me here can attest, they'd go, oh, right on, exactly. So I actually started all right, you Google yourself, and then I thought about the loyalty programs, and I thought about what credit cards I have, and then I started to think about what's at the pharmacy, and my Easy Pass, and where I drive, and the list got long. It started to be hundreds and hundreds of items. When I was in college, I worked at a police department and got fingerprinted, and I thought, well, maybe the FBI had something. So I did a FOIA request, and it's and I really was trying to be obsessive about it, and every couple days, I'd think of something else. It wasn't very long ago I thought, Amazon knows how fast I read because of my Kindle. They know, and it's actually very telling. Amazon knows, do I cheat and look at the end of the book? How many books are sitting on my Kindle that I've never finished? So on one hand, I looked at this list and I thought, how do I feel about this? Part of it is stuff that, like credit cards, it's things, I didn't even remember going to those places. It's a richer, more complex picture than I can even recall about myself. And yet, at the other hand, I thought, should I worry? What's going to happen to this? How is this going to play out? What is this future going to be like? And I realized I've always been kind of fascinated with the future. When I was a little kid, that's me in the top row, I was like the tallest kid in the class. And if you actually look, I think I'm taller than the tall kid next to me, Mark DeMars, 4th grade. And when I was a kid, I just felt like the future, somehow my body grew faster than the person inside. And somehow if I could kind of jump into the future, I could catch up. When I was 13, I grew 6 inches that year. And it was my body, it's like I didn't fit into the body that was growing faster than I was growing. And I thought, I just didn't fit in, I didn't fit, and somehow I thought the future would be better if I could see the future, if I could only anticipate the future, I could see who I could become, and it would sort itself out. And so I think we leave clues for ourselves. You know, when it took me several tries in college to get my major right. You know, I moved a bunch of different times. I've lived in different cities. I had a whole bunch of different jobs. I worked 20 years in the tech industry. In fact, there was, for several years, I actually only worked on technology in the computer industry for future products. I only worked on stuff that we were inventing that would come in, you know, far into the future. So, and then I made a really big switch. It was like, who am I? I quit my job and I went back to graduate school. And when I finished graduate school, I went back to graduate school for art. I started making work about time. And I just had this sense that something had shifted. It's like the whole world had shifted. Time had become these smaller and smaller bits. And I started working with imagine time, right? Because you can imagine time forward, you can imagine time backward. And I was trying to somehow capture that feeling of fragmented little bits of time. And I knew from my engineering background that if you really want to understand something, you measure it, right? Write it down, measure it. And so I thought, well, I should actually just measure my own time. And so I got a journal, I started writing it down, and I realized it's really, I don't know, does anybody do this? It's really, really hard to actually keep track of what you do every day. And so I Googled it, and I actually found this guy. I found Ben Lipkowitz online, who'd been tracking and measuring all of his time for years. Every one of those horizontals is 24 hours, and he color categorized it by what he was doing. The blue is sleep, obviously, right? And I looked at this and went, oh my God, it's kind of the way I imagined it. It kind of looked like my work. And it was like, oh, right. I scraped it. I downloaded every bit of it. In years of data, and so it's like steal like an artist. I grabbed it and I started making work, color-coded, cut, glued, put together based on his time. And I thought his time, it was really beautiful. It was kind of sitting at a diagonal, if you look back. He sleeps on a 26-hour clock, meaning it's like he grabs 2 extra hours out of every day. And it kind of causes it, I mean, he kind of is like leaning into the future. And I thought his time, it's so unique, it's so specific, it's so unusual, it's so him. But at the same time, it was like, I want to measure my own time. And I actually figured out a way, and I thought, I can do this. I can measure my time while I'm sleeping. So I got this really accurate, it was an EEG sleep device. It was called a Zeo. And it very accurately tracks your sleep. And I got a chance to see what my sleep looked like. And it actually turns out you're really busy while you're sleeping. It's like waking, sleeping, it's not that different. And you're thinking, it's like, oh, I'm like really excited when I first saw my sleep, I'm getting my sleep scores. And the truth is, I was so surprised. I went to bed early, I slept, right, 8 hours, and it turns out I'm a horrible sleeper. I mean, I'm like terrible. I'm thinking I'm an A+ student, I'm like the good one, and it turns out I'm like a C-. On my sleep, it was with this real moment of almost kind of being, it was crushing. And I mean, I had this real moment of I am not who I thought I was. And some people would just abandon it, throw it in a closet, but I was kind of hooked because it was this wait. But I didn't want to be the only one that was wearing this thing strapped around my forehead every night, and so I the little thing. I got one from my husband, Marc. And Marc goes, okay, all right. It's one of those, it's a husband thing. Very reluctantly, it's like, okay, but just you wait. I'm a terrible sleeper. Well, it turns out Marc is an amazing sleeper. Most of the time. It's either fabulous or terrible, but he only remembers the bad. And I thought, that's so him. What? I mean, what if this thing can kind of measure your personality? So I thought I logged that idea, and so I started making work. You know, all the different sleep cycles. Deep sleep was red, REM sleep, right, is pink. I took the light sleep, which is known as trash sleep, and folded it up out of the way, and came up with this whole rule system. It's like an algorithm, like an artist algorithm, and started figuring out a system for the data, and made a whole body of work, a whole bunch. Color-coded, glued, and I put it all in a show in Los Angeles. And it really was my first really big gallery show. And it got a big fat review in the Los Angeles Times. Not one of these little blurbs, I mean with pictures and columns. And I remember my dealer called me both of us had tears in our eyes. It was really like, oh. And then it got picked up by blogs, and it was out there. And the company that made that little sleep device, because I talked about it, they emailed me. They go, Laurie, what can we do to help you? And, well, it was like, oh my God, what should I ask for? And I decided to ask for more data. And it was the first time where I could really see, I ended up seeing, they gave me a bunch of anonymous data. I think it was the staff. I mean, I'd seen Marc's data, but it was me. And what you're taking a look at is each of these are about a month of sleep, and the purple is the good stuff. That's deep sleep. And the orange is when you're waking up. And then every stripe is a night of sleep, and so the longer it is, that's more hours. So you can kind of see me. And then right below me, you can see this woman, and it's like, oh my God, she's amazing. Super compact, she's getting great sleep, look at all the purple, and she's super efficient. That's great. And then you look at this guy on the top right, he's getting good purple deep sleep, but it's taking him hours longer. And then this poor guy on the bottom, he's sleeping forever, but he's waking up constantly, and it's terrible. Then, right, so as you start to look at these and you go, these are they're very specific to them. They're very unique. These are almost like a fingerprint. That your data is almost like a portrait. And I had this idea, these are like a data portrait, and I had this notion that these could start to be, not just sleep, but data about you could start to be like a data selfie, a sense of self, a picture of you. And I'm an artist, and you go, okay, that's a good idea. That's good. And after this show in LA, then I decided, all right, I'm going to double down. I'm going to measure everything. Right? We're living in this world where sensors get really small, your microbiome, your DNA, where you go, your skin temperature. Right? I started to say, well, I'll use myself for research. What will it be like when everything about you is known, and I'll live in the future, right? I'll jump forward. I'll be ahead of everybody by a few years. What it will be like when everything about us is measured. And every gadget, every watch, everything I could get, I started tracking myself. And I thought, well, I'll just really pay attention and see how it feels. I mean, it's kind of there are artists here tonight. It's what artists do. You take the world that you care about and you try to explain it to others. And I also have this kind of, Jamie, you know this, I have this fantasy that if you see something real as an artist, that sometimes it gets proven as real science a lot later. So I'm thinking, I'm serious about this. I'm really going to go for it. I'm going to look at patterns in the data that somehow reflect something in us. the things that are like these unconscious proportions of you, things that are not deliberate, things that you really can't anticipate. It's somehow this inner sense of self, this I kept grappling with this idea of fluency and familiarity, and that somehow those proportions are almost like a neural Fibonacci. It's like, it's the golden section of your mind, that those proportions somehow are familiar enough when you see them that it's intuitively you. And so I just thought we tend to cluster, particularly when you look at location data. You tend to go the same places. And at the same time, I had this, I kept trying to put together cause and effect. If I walked this much, this is what my weight would be, or if I did this, this is what my pH of my urine would be. It's sort of like if this led to that, and I realized that humans are really noisy data objects, that it's really hard to see, you're just too complicated. And I started to let go of cause and effect, and I started to just focus on the rhythm of the data. How would these feel? How would this data feel if it was large scale? What if they were room size, big, bumpy walls? What if we could start to live with that ambient data of us? Maybe they're 3D printed in the future. Maybe you laser cut them and they sort of this automatic, patterns on your walls. Maybe they're biofabricated, little bacterial cellulose. And so you get some new data and you just it's the produce section of the market. You just hose them down, and it dissolves and it grows a new one. Or maybe you move an apartment, you get to a new place and you just fold them up and recycle and you just print a new one in the new place. So I started to just live with the data. After some months, the walls in my studio were filled with all these patterns of my data. And I just started to notice, right? I'm really paying attention. And I thought, well, these feel real. They feel organic. They feel human. I thought they felt like me. They felt comforting. They felt like they resonated. And so what if that's the whole point? What if patterns are a way to see yourself, your data, as art? Because art makes data sticky. It gets you to look longer. It holds you. It has emotion. Because humans are really pattern recognition machines, right? Numbers are very abstract, but we feed on pattern. Pattern is very intuitive to us. So maybe this is what happens in the future, right? I'm thinking about the future. Maybe it's your data extracted as pattern and it's played back to you as art. And I find a way to get all my data, to understand who can I be. Once at an artist residency, this is these places where you go stay in the cabins, you go out in the cottages late at night, you drink and talk, and we were psychoanalyzing each other based on the art, the work that we made. And it actually, the truth is, you can psychoanalyze people based on their work. This kind of works for everybody. But, right, so we're sitting around and one of the artists looks at me and says, Laurie, you're wearing a Fitbit. You have this watch that keeps track of your skin temperature. You're peeing on a strip. You're trying to figure out who you are. And, and after some time I thought about this. This rolled around in my head for a while and I thought, well, I think we're all trying to figure out who we are. I mean, you think you know yourself. But it's kind of like when I first saw the sleep data. I was really surprised. But if you think about the choices that you make, you move to a new city, you think you're going to like it, you get a new apartment, you get a new boyfriend, you get a new job. You do them because you think you're going to like them and they're going to work out, but they don't every time. I mean, you think you're going to know yourself, but it's just so hard to know. So when I look at the future of all this data about us, I just don't think it's about advertising. I think it's about so much more. It feels so personable. It just feels like This data is about identity. I think it's this question of, who am I? I think it's a new way to see ourselves. Maybe we use data, maybe we use technology as a shortcut to mindfulness. Because maybe our brain can't tell the difference of the intake of a data selfie or meditative self-reflection. Both of them feel like contemplating the self. But if this idea about art from data is not convincing, because I'm trying to get you to say, I think data is going to be irresistible, I think overcoming this powerlessness, 91% of us feel like we've lost control of our data, 85% say we're uncomfortable with what's tracked about us, but 66% of us have given up, right? You're tracking me. I worry about what you're doing with it, and I'm getting nothing but some lousy ads. I looked at shoes yesterday, so now that's all I see today. Right. I want my data. So what if we could take back my data, your data? What if we could take back our data and reclaim it? I don't think it's about getting paid for it. I think it's overcoming the opacity. It's just so one-sided. If my data is so valuable, why don't I get to see it? I want my data. It's not the simple stuff that I get to download, because I download it, but it's what the algorithms predict about me. I want my data. I see a future where companies are pressured to give data back, to make it two-way. If you track me, I get access to it. I want my data. Right, so after this current uproar, this year has been really hellish for tech companies, not just Facebook. And I think they're going to get more sensitive about the data that they track about us and lock it down. But I go talk to companies, and I've given talks at very large tech companies, and I talk to them about it. The willingness to share the data back with us. And they either say, oh, it's so hard, it's anonymized, blah, 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 blah. How would we possibly give it back to you? And what would you do with it? And I actually think I don't think it's that hard. I think social pressure will cause companies to give our data back to us. And I think an ecosystem of apps will let us play with it. So for 99 cents, I could get an app that, tracks my mood against my credit card. Or I could take a look at a map that tracks all the places I go with all the people that I know. So what if my data looks like pattern? What if my data looks like pattern art in the spaces that I live? And maybe this whole bonus is that if I live with my data, it affects my immune system. I want my data. I want what I dreamed as a little kid, to be able to see into the future and understand who I could become. I think data is irresistibly powerful to human understanding. I want my data. So take back your data. I will tell you that owning your data is going to be a bigger deal than privacy. So take back your data and turn it into art. All right, I'm switching gears. And when I measure things about myself or I go out and track, it takes many, many, many tries, and I use software to help me. And I use Excel, and a lot of times use conditional formatting to look at data and numbers in color to be able to see it, always with the eye of trying to turn something into something physical. So the daily time tracking to turn it into wood blocks. This is Ben Lipquitz's daily time tracking, and do watercolor drawings. So this kind of demystifies it. For a lot of people, it's like, where do you get the data? You're starting to see. This was nightly sleep by city, by 52 weeks, and turned it into a bumpy wall. Bedtime sleep scores by what city I was in and what time I went to bed. When I was in New York, no surprise, I went to bed much, much later and got less sleep. A month of sleep, tip it the other way, make drawings. This is a team of developers, and it's their chat metadata. They communicated each other, but I didn't see what they were saying. It was just what time of day, how long the message was, and who it was. And the orange ones were the developers, the designers were shades of blue, and turned it into a whole lobby installation. Location tracking, the little dot, 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 dot of where you go. That whole idea that your locations start to those patterns of where you go can be really quite beautiful, which got me to really look at the first mock-up for FrickBits, which was an art experiment. It was an app that ran for 3 years from 2014 to 2017. And it was a free artist app, and it was based on a watercolor pattern portrait that I'd made. That's how it ran. And this is when I first started this whole idea of take back your data, because people go, what do I want with my data? And I thought art was like, it's inarguable. Turn it into art. Sometimes projects get me to try things I've never experimented with before. This is a project at Texas A&M, and I was able to work with glass, which I hadn't really understood, but glass, the color of glass lasts forever. It's in the chemistry of the glass, it never fades. So when you see, cathedral windows that go back 500 years and you see the glass and it's still that bright color, that's the original glass. So glass color is forever. And that just, I thought it was fabulous. It also got me to take a look at data that wasn't numeric at the beginning. I took the descriptions of the projects that the engineers and the students had worked on as this was going into an engineering building. And I took the exact same data and analyzed it. Same data, you can see, like, people think I just land on the final answer right away. The one in the upper right is where I ended up. And then it turned into glass. The project on the Lamar Underpass, this is the last project we're going to talk about. It's remarkable in a lot of ways. When I first saw the opportunity, when Sue Lamb tells people to ask people to tell your friends, I mean, everybody gets these projects. This one is near to my house, and I was just really excited when I first saw the opportunity. And I thought, well, how do I, how do I come at this? You're looking for a hook, you're looking for something, and the proposal, the question of the RFP said, make something that's appealing to visitors, which is kind of, it's sort of like anything, right? It's like anything. And so but it gave me a direction. It was funded by the hotel occupancy tax, and I thought, all right, visitors. And I realized, I started digging in and found that 25 million visitors come to Austin every year. And when you first hear that number, you think it's impossible, but really, there's a ton of visitors come to Austin every year. And I thought, all right, we'll make this installation a celebration of visitors and the murals that they Instagram from Austin. And I think if you actually look at what people do when they come to Austin, they stand in front of murals and they take their picture and they post it on Instagram. I'm not kidding. I mean, I think this might beat out everything in Austin in terms of what people do. So I fixated on that, and the original mock-up image is pretty close to where we ended up. Yeah, and the walls, as you see, are visitor data, the activities that visitors do and the reasons that they come. And I was pretty excited when I saw those, because they're the same reasons that we love Austin. It's the nightlife, the activities, you spend time with friends and family, you go outdoors, you go out to eat, the same, it turns out that the reason that visitors like Austin are the same reasons that we like Austin. And then the signs are sampled color data from the Austin murals that people Instagram. And then the address of that mural is below each one. So the murals were the ones that were Instagrammed the most, right? Hi, how are you? I love you so much. I mean, these are iconic places. The Hope Outdoor Gallery, You're My Better Half. I spent a lot of time looking at the pictures that people posted in front of these. I mean, some of them were so sweet. And not sicky sweet. I mean, I were like little kids in front of I love you so much. They're just so great. And so you can see, right, I color sampled each one and, had this idea about upholstering them and went and found Sherry Bingham, which I thought they were going to be stripes like this because I was thinking how I would sew them. And when I went and found Sherry, she's an upholstery, she's a designer, she's amazing. I cannot say enough good things about her. We're sitting there and she goes, oh no, we can make these into patterns and we can go find. She hunted and found the fabric she figured out. Like the orange one in the middle, that's the Willie for President. You can start to see each one. The You're My Better Half has the yellow and the right and the little heart. Each one is very specific to each mural. The project, it's always fun to go back and see the before pictures. I know. This used to be a part of town. I've talked to a lot of people, you probably that have lived here. This used to be kind of a outlying, it was a forlorn part of town. And it was only when Whole Foods went in and the apartments over at Seaholm, and now it's a trafficked spot. You take a look at it where it was. It's a couple blocks from my house, and Carl Trominski's signs, I'm all still fascinated as you drive through there. It was like you're part of the flow, and I love this optical illusion. I just loved his whole installation. I think it just got a lot of graffiti over the years, and it was tough, but yet it's becoming a really high pedestrian spot, sort of super trafficked. It's interesting because the way the installation goes in, I think in some ways it brings attention to the rhythm of his signs and the angle that they sit and the idea of having, I think it, I met him during the installation that Sue helped pull us together, and it was so fun to talk to him. So these are some installation, these are the last few installation pics. We mixed 140 gallons worth of paint and gesso, and it's not like wall paint, it's actual acrylic paint. It's just like golden acrylic. You buy it from Nova Paint in Los Angeles and you get it in 5-gallon pails, and it's real pigment and it's gonna look great, right? The project is to stay up for a year, and I wanted it so it wouldn't fade at all. Painted by Blue Way. Some people might know Blue. He's the studio manager and husband of Bailey Liu. This picture says everything about him. He's amazing. This project got done in just over 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, because of him. He's like the strongest person I know. And after we put the gesso down and started to paint the blue, we started to see this checkerboard pattern. And it was, look at that. And so one of the things when we picked the blue is, would the blue look good, when the stripes come down? Would the blue look good with Carl Trominski's work? And I think it's beautiful.
Sorry, why did you choose the blue to begin with?
Because I always thought that you were part of this flow. Like you were the installation, that somehow going on that underpass was like going underwater. And so I made it feel like it was going underwater. And kind of a water, it's a stylized, idealized blue water. It's not the color of Town Lake. And Sherry Bingham and her husband Christian Bingham, the signs, if you look carefully at night, they're lit on the back side and there's little solar panels on the top. They're made out of solution dyed acrylic. It's outdoor fabric and outdoor foam, and they will not fade. You look at these things in a year, they're going to look the same. They're also, it's kind of an optical illusion because you don't have a sense of how big they are. They're 6 feet tall, they're bigger than her. Tucker, William Tucker, is an artist. He is afraid of heights and was amazing. I mean, he overcame it to get on the top of the scaffold and paint. And people know Tucker's work. If you look really carefully in that little square, he left a little, that's a Tucker. That was for free, that's his art. That's the work he makes. It's a freebie. I know, it's so exciting to see it. I don't think anybody can ever touch it because it's up underneath. We painted as scooters went by. We, sat on the sidewalk, Tucker, blue. Their hand rolled, their hand dripped, it's handmade. The thing that really got us while we were working on it was how many people, the people that you see as they come by, the people as they walk by the space. I think art can change the feeling and complexion of a neighborhood. It can change the feel of space. Art has really an amazing power. And I can't tell you the number of people that thanked us, that beeped their horn and waved and said positive things. And I've had people Instagram me and talk about their commute and how much it's changed, how they feel. So let me just finish with a little 2-minute video that Kristen Bronzek made and used a drone. It's awesome. Here we go.
Have you ever driven along the Lamar Bridge Underpass and wondered what the series of strange blue signs were? Well, they were a public art installation by artist Carl Trominski. And if you've driven by recently, you might have noticed the signs have been replaced with an expansive, colorful new mural. The mural was created as part of Tempo Refresh, a City of Austin program in which artists are invited to reimagine or refresh public artwork in the city's collection. Artist Laurie Frick invites us to look at data in a whole new way.
I have a background in high tech for years in tech companies and have an engineering background. And it's kind of funny as an artist because all that stuff seeps into the work that you make now. I looked at the data for the murals that visitors Instagram from Austin and color sampled. All the really, famous iconic murals like I love you so much, or hi, how are you, or you're my butter half. And so it's the colors in those murals make the patterns in the upholstery that Sherry Bingham from Iron Threads made. I mean, they're amazing when you look at them up close.
I wanted to put in these arrows that are everywhere on this. And so I did little drawings of arrows on my fabric. So it was like a whole lot of finagling to get all the pictures drawn and get where all the colors were going to be.
So you've got visitor data along the sides. You've got the murals that people Instagram, right, upholstered. But we wanted to give people a hint, like, what is this? And so the address below each sign is basically the location of the mural that we've color sampled. So it's a little bit like a scavenger hunt. I always thought Carl Trominski's piece was about flow, right? That you were the flow, and somehow you were underwater. And so I tried to work with those things and make those part of the piece. I mean, you don't lose the signs. If anything, it's drawn attention to them. I think art changes the way people feel about a place. I think artists have a story to tell. I think they have, a message. A lot of artists put it, really subtly into this visual work, and people can then feel it and experience it. But you don't need to go into a museum. You get to see this stuff every day.
All Austinites are invited to enjoy the new installation and to share photos with the hashtag AustinAIPP. To learn more about the Tempo Refresh program and other works in the city's collection, visit austincreates.com.
Nice video from the city. Isn't it nice to watch it? It's so good. You should be proud. It's so awesome. Anyway, so thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Let's come up.
Anybody have questions from the audience? This is your big opportunity. Yeah.
Why is the refresh just one year? I realize that's maybe.
Yeah, I'll take that if you don't mind. Because that was the funding time frame is we do Tempo on an annual basis. I will say that we're going to go back to the Art and Public Places panel and the Arts Commission and the artist to ask if we can continue having the art installation in its totality up for an additional year. Hopefully that's not a surprise.
I think it's a great idea. But I will tell you, and people think that the temporary part is like a negative, but for an artist, having something that you think is for a year or 2 years, it just frees you. It's just, so this idea of permanence, it's, for an artist's perspective, it's more interesting, it's more freeing, it gives you, takes the worry. But it's long enough that people will be sick of it in a couple of years, and it's be fine.
Now, I'll just add that has changed my life. I mean, it sounds kind of hyperbolic, but every time I would drive through there before, I thought, there's so much potential here. Where is it? It's gone, it's hiding, it's withered. And now I just get so happy when I drive through there. It's quite powerful.
I can't tell you how nice that is to hear. Thank you. That's so great. Way in the back.
I have a question about data and a specific subset. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So a big debate right now is about genetic data that all the companies who are doing the genetic testing are collecting. How do you feel about that? Like, what are the repercussions? Like, is there a possibility of a positive loop there, or are we all screwed?
Well, I think because I did my DNA testing in 2010, and I've uploaded it to GEDmatch and shared my DNA data. There's a big percentage of people that are starting to figure out that their parentage isn't who they thought, which is really, and I've met a couple of these people lately. It's like so there's a reality to I'm not who I thought I was. But I think we'll get pretty quickly, and the US might not be the one that leads in this, but that every baby gets DNA tested. And the reason will be for health reasons, right? But I took a look at this combined with what I saw going on in Ancestry, which is crowdsourcing genealogy data. And I thought it's not that far away from the genetic data and to basically start to understand who's who and who's related to who. There might be a sense of connection that we don't have now. Multiracially, just that diversity, people are more connected than they imagine.
But how to deal with the negative aspects of that? So like I guess the loss of anonymity and the possibility of discrimination based on that data being public.
It's the question about is that if people are mysterious, that somehow you can't discriminate against anybody individually because you're in this anonymous pool. I think no matter what happens, as data is going to be collected about us, it's happening. And I think the question of discrimination has been hiding under anonymity. And so discrimination is going to be a separate problem, different from what's data is collected about you. I think those will start to have to be distinct. You're kind of, part of me is I'm looking at this tidal wave and trying to see into the future and see, where is it that people aren't seeing what will happen? Yeah. Do you want to do questions? Do you want me to just?
Oh yeah, just go.
Just go for it. Okay.
I know you have a couple of problems with graffiti. Has that continued?
No, it's kind of, okay. We got tagged while we were installing, and by the next morning we'd painted over it and it was gone. It was the night that Beto gave the big auditorium shores, and there were a lot of people downtown. And then in November we got tagged twice in a week. And they tag, you know exactly who it is. Apart and side, there's signatures on the wall. And it's kind of crazy because they paint right over the stripes, so it's a pain in the neck. But I set aside part of the budget. We had a long conversation about graffiti. We actually went into this with a very good plan. I'm impressed. And it turns out it's easier and faster to paint over, and then we're in control of it. And Tucker, who you see, is the graffiti painter, and those 2 times we went in and fixed the graffiti literally by the next day. And so we've gone now 2 months with no tagging. So, part of it is I think it's a little bit of a broken windows thing. So my husband and I have gone out and weeded. We take out the weeds. It's hard to tell from these photos. Yeah, exactly. Those weeds are gone. So it's part of it is, I think if the site feels super clean, it's, so, yeah. So we're on it.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're doing anything with like real-time data where it's something that's not static, but and the second question is, are you only using Excel for your sort of back-end visualizations, or do you have other software you use?
Yeah, the first part is, so you can hear his question. So I use Tableau, and I use Excel. I've done a little bit of other, like a little bit of Python, like little tiny bits, but those are my go-to. And I've had friends as part of the ITP program at NYU that are sort of these mavens, like unbelievable, real-time, interactive, and I opted not to go that route. I mean, part of it is I like this handmade, analog, built, and so there is something static about it, but I'm opting for the handmade, and that's kind of what I'm giving up. So, yeah.
What the app was real time?
The,
Frick Bits.
oh yeah, Frick Bits was real time. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, Frick Bits. Yeah. Oh, Lisa, wait. The video, Lisa Woods is sitting here right behind you. That animatic that you saw, did you walk in and see your thing running? While people were waiting, your Frick Bits, your life, your data, patterns make beautiful patterns. Lisa Wood. Oh my God. I interrupt, yes.
Okay, thank you. Two questions as well. One, has your sleep improved since you know all this data about it now, or did you be able to adjust that? And then, second, can you tell us a little about what you're working on now in your future project or whatever?
Yes. My sleep did improve. You can't go from bad to great. I will tell you, everything good happens while you sleep. I mean, I would be a whole nother talk, but literally everything good about you happens while sleeping. So it's like, get more sleep, like seriously, get more sleep. I mean, what I did is I started, I knew what a good night of sleep felt like. And then you colder rooms, darker, every little bit of hygiene makes a difference. Sort of anti-intuitive. You go to bed earlier, you actually sleep. It's harder to sleep in than it is to go to bed earlier and go to sleep earlier. So if you need more sleep, you think I'll sleep in the morning, it doesn't work. You have to go to bed early. So yeah, I did get better. And the second part of your question was?
If you could talk about any projects you're working on.
Oh, that I'm working on now. I had this idea that the data about you is going to end up being not just surpassed, but I think the thing that's coming is the data about the people around you. And it's like the chemistry of friends and who's affected you and who's influenced you. And it's not just what you'll be able to gather and know about social media. It's the ability to play with your behavior based on who's around you. And if I know who's around you and if I can affect who's around you and who's affected you before. And so I've been having friends make lists of everybody that they remember that has had influence or effect on their life. And I'm actually making these glass pieces. If you follow me on Instagram, those are the pieces that I'm making in glass. If anybody wants to make one of these lists, I don't know, some people can attest it's therapeutic. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. I'm also working on a piece that's a big ceiling in a financial company. It's going to go across the ceiling. That'll be later this summer. And then I'm making collage pieces, which I'll talk more about soon. Yeah. Yes.
Lauren, thank you for your talk. I'm interested in the transformation from this piece by Carl to your piece. Was there any given, or could you have taken these signs down, or what was the process to go from because it was an existing piece that kind of faded or something?
Yeah.
I never quite saw, I think I never noticed when it was first installed, so I don't quite know what it looked like initially. But how did you make the decision to
what to
swap
do?
over or something?
Yeah. His piece, it's super controversial. And what's fascinating about it is I can just say blue signs to anybody in Austin and they know exactly. So on one hand, and it's industrial minimalism, it was one of the very first conceptual pieces that went in Austin. And it has a sense of rhythm, and so I was super respectful of the piece because I thought it was great. I don't think there was any desire to take the signs down. What an art intervention, and you probably have seen these, was an art intervention is to try to take something and add to it and make it, to play with it in a positive way, or push against it, or so I took this idea that it felt like it was underwater and I made it blue, and then I had remembered, people remember there were yarn bombings, and that's like 7 years ago, and I can remember, I know, and I really loved those, and I thought it's kind of like that. So there was more than just the sign history there. It had been yarn bombed once, and there's this artisanal quality in Austin. So how do you make this feel like an Austin kind of place? And so those were the ideas that went into the piece. I mean, it's not, it sounds like, to a normal person, it sounds like a huge budget, but it wasn't a big budget. And to be able to cover all the walls and to do it with really, really, really good paint, and to put really good upholstery, and to have everybody get paid, and to do it in 2.5 weeks, it was like, so, the city was super helpful. And these Art in Public Places gets a lot out of very medium-sized budgets and make them look like spectacular all over the city. Yeah. We're good.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Jump in. Thank you, Laurie.
Awesome job.